right, guys, we've got it up and running. Everything looks good. All right, guys, so we essentially are somewhat chronicling this build. This 370z Nismo, it's a really beautiful car, is owned by Ryan, and Ryan essentially is on his third engine. This is his third motor, and this is one we've personally built for him. And as many of you are aware, and if you're not aware, the VQ family of engines is really susceptible to head gasket problems, head lift problems, and essentially the last two engines Ryan's had in there, he's had head gasket problems, right? Starts to overheat, you start turning the boost up, and there's ways to deal with it. You know, a lot of it is basically making sure you build it in a certain fashion. There's different methods to doing that. A lot of it is the way it's tuned, what it's going to be used for. So like anything, it's not just one little piece to the puzzle. So the previous engine we actually had in there about 1.5 years ago. We made a 1,000 wheel with it. So Fast Intentions twin turbo kit. It had our turbo setup, which I call the stage Sebs. We got it up to about 30 pounds of boost, roughly at around 25, 26 pounds. We were showing signs of coolant filling up the reservoir, right? So we didn't stop. A lot of it was because we were doing some R&D for the engine company that put that motor together, just to see how far we could take it, how much power it would make, and how bad it could get. So we got it, so it was pretty bad. That particular engine has copper head gaskets. It doesn't have what's known as the top fuel hoops, but it has flame hoops, which are essentially a little different. That setup really works on a lot of different other platforms, a lot of cast iron engines. It's really, you know, bulletproof. And but again, because it's a VQ, because these things are very sensitive, it didn't hold up. So made good power, just started to push coolant and overheat. So we are doing essentially a rebuild of Ryan's first engine that he bought that way from a previous owner of the car. So that guy had the engine built. He had the stage 2 at the time, Fast Intentions turbos. We made a little over 800 wheel with that setup. He ran it for a little bit of time and it started showing signs of overheating, pushing coolant. So we've gone ahead, we've rebuilt this thing. It does have the CSS, the cylinder support systems closed deck. We did actually find a problem with this engine when we took it apart. Somebody had repaired one of the bolt holes in the block and they had used a helicoil, which is totally fine. But once we went to go torque down the heads, we realized that there was a problem. It wasn't holding the torque. So we are using the BC head gaskets with this, and you know, really the goal is to enjoy this car. So we're going to probably keep it around 800 wheel. We're not going to really push it much past it. So the previous engine that was in there, that's going to get sent out to the previous engine rebuilder. They're going to take a look at it, see what can be done better. So they're going to tear it apart. We're not going to do any of that. We'll let them handle that and see what they can do different on their end. So again, we are getting close to getting this thing ready to put back in the chassis. We've got our exhaust manifolds on and we're about to bolt our turbos back in. So join us, follow us. We're gonna get this thing on the dyno. We're gonna do some break-in, get it started up, and hopefully we'll have a good little fun setup that, you know, will make close to 1,000 horsepower at the engine. But, you know, that's a lot of power, right? So, you know, I think once we start getting to those levels, You know, how much is enough, right? We always want more. Is it for bragging rights? Who knows? But I like it because we get to push the boundaries, right? Get to see how far we can take things. So even though it may not be too streetable, it's fun to do it and learn at it too. So Ryan, you know, it's great because he's willing to do this again for the third time, right? Just to see how far we can go. Is it foolish? You might say it's foolish, but that's for him to decide. I like it. I've done a lot of R&Ding on my setup. Of course, I am a shop owner, so I kind of need to do that. So I've gone probably through about 3 motors, different combinations. Again, head gasket lifts. I actually melted the top of the deck on one of my motors. So, I mean, I've tried it all, you know, the juke head bolts, different head gasket combinations, you know, different torque sequences, different torque specs. So we've got something that's pretty good that we're really happy with. And we've also done the top fuel hoops setup. So we have a customer out in New Mexico that's had his setup with a copper head gasket for, gosh, almost 2 years now. And knock on wood, it's been reliable. He's been enjoying it. And, you know, that's definitely a little bit more of a cost. We've had good luck with that one. I know Soho does it that way as well, and they've had good success. But you know, a lot of it comes down to just the simple steps a lot of the times. You know, we'll sometimes get a built motor and we'll tear it apart, and we'll notice that they didn't use the correct head washers. So, you know, we just got a set of CA 625 ARP head studs, and guess what? The washers they came with weren't the correct size. So, you know, we're not going to go ahead and roll with that. We're going to order the correct washers because we want to make sure we get clamp load on that washer, on that head. All that stuff is very critical, right? And I know I mentioned also a lot of it has to do with tuning. You know, a lot of it comes down to, of course, how much boost pressure, how much ignition timing you're running. Those two go hand in hand. So you don't want to run too low of ignition timing. You want to have the right setup, you know. Too much ignition timing can be a problem. Your compression ratio, all that stuff plays a big factor. So timing, compression ratio, boost on how well these engines can hold up. So let's go ahead, let's get the rest of this turbo kit installed, and we'll get this thing back in the car. All right, guys, we've got it up and running. Everything looks good. So when we first get these things started, it's gonna smoke a little bit, very natural. Just wanna make sure there's no leaks. So we've done that. We've looked underneath, there's no coolant leaks, no oil leaks, so that's good. We'll let this thing get up to temp for a little bit. We'll shut it off. We'll check the rest of our fluids, make sure all that stuff looks good. We don't wanna let it in idle for too long. We don't want those rings to seat. So we'll get this thing roadworthy, and we will either get it on the dyno or make a few little laps around our test track and get that engine broken in. So very critical that you take that extra step, you know, by using that break-in oil and letting this thing not idle for too long. You want everything to wear in nice. So we're gonna do our final little checks. We'll get the wheels on this bad boy, bleed the clutch, get the bumper on, and then we will either go for a drive or get it on the dyno. All right, guys, we are just wrapping up finally with Ryan Richardson's 370Z. We put a good 200 to 300 miles of break-in on this bad boy. It's running synthetic oil now, and we've gone ahead and made our passes. And because, again, it doesn't have anything crazy with top fuel hoops or a copper head gasket, we're gonna keep this one conservative. So we're gonna be basically keeping it at low to mid 800 wheel. That got us 22 pounds of boost with the Stage Seb Zona rotor turbos. You know, these things are barely even breaking a sweat at that amount of boost. So previously when we had the other motor in here from Mazworks with the flame hoops, we got that bad boy up to 30 pounds of boost, and we had just crossed into the 1,000 wheel threshold. The other thing that we're doing besides keeping the boost low is we're not going too crazy with our ignition timing. So again, all of that is in order to preserve and keep this thing as happy as possible with our head gasket head lift situation that these VQ motors suffer from. So everything looked beautiful. Coolant stayed where it needed to be. Coolant temps were right where they needed to be. So I'm really, really happy. Plenty of power. The other thing we did while we were tuning this, of course, is we could do full send throughout the entire power band. So we've limited, again, timing and boost in the mid-range. Another reason for that, specifically not just for the head gaskets, is for traction. So this thing already is a handful at the power level it has. If we were to give it more duty cycle in the mid-range, we're definitely gonna be having just complete loss of traction, and it's already a handful as it is now. So really happy with this all. Again, we'll recap on it. It's our built motor, nothing too fancy, just your typical forged rods, pistons, BC head gasket, ARP CA 625s, you know, certain sequence that we do, all that head gasket stuff, the washers we use, how we modify the washers, I think all plays a big role, right? It's all in the details. So everything just has to be just right. So this thing's ready to go back home, and I'm excited to go take it for a run on the freeway. All right, guys, here we have our dyno graph at 19 pounds of boost. You can see we made 724, almost 725, 627 foot-pounds of torque. And you can see kind of the boost curve from our map 4 is about the same. We hold it steady though at the very top end. So just to level it off. So you can see that, you know, another 3 pounds of boost gets us essentially another 100 wheels. So again, what a testament to how good this kit is, and specifically these Zona rotor turbos, these Stage Seb turbos. These things just wake up 3 pounds of boost. Huge power gains with just 3 pounds of boost. Let's pull up our map number 2, which is going to be about 17 pounds of boost. Okay, so this is where we ended up. This is done in 4th gear, 22 pounds of boost. We're hitting our peak boost at 7,000. And again, the reason for that is I'm limiting the amount of boost pressure and timing we're making in the mid-range areas. So plenty of torque. We could definitely get this bad boy well over 700, probably 750 foot-pounds of torque. It can easily make, but we want to limit all that. Peak power is at 7,200 RPM, 827 wheel, and our peak torque is at 6,400. And usually your peak torque is going to coincide with your peak boost pressures, pretty close into there. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up what this thing does at different boost levels to give you guys an idea. So this is gonna be our map 4 setting, our highest setting, and we'll ensure that we have our safeties, our boost limit in place in case it's an extra cold night. That way this thing doesn't cross into the 24 or 25 pound threshold. I don't foresee it being a problem, but we wanna make this thing live as long as possible. And you know, so that's one thing we're gonna implement to do that. All right, so this is our map 2, 17 pounds of boost. We're making 676 wheel and 600 foot-pounds of torque. This one, basically again, lower duty cycles on our boost control, and we're holding it pretty darn flat. Our base wastegate pressure on map 1 is 13 pounds of boost. We were essentially right there in the high 5s, low 6s on that map. But there you have it. Really happy with this power level, and I can't wait for Ryan to get his hands on it.